It is done. Special meeting is over. Marissa?
Yes. All right, tonight we have Committee of the Whole for Monday, February 14th, 2022. The first item on tonight's agenda is a discussion, and we have a special guest, and I will, turn it over to the mayor to introduce our guest for the presentation tonight.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilwoman. I appreciate it. So this evening we have with us a familiar face to those of you who have been around this. Mr. Tony Collins, who is the CEO of the Ymca, and also Brandy, I have to say her last name. Al-Isa. Brandy Braun. Who also is with the Y, and we're going to actually share a little bit about why exactly they're here this evening. As we have shared before, we have been working on a facilities assessment over the past few years, really to determine how we will move forward with regard to our facility needs going forward. The assessment began in 2017, as you all are aware, under former Mayor Nealon's administration. It was not completed at that time, but we completed it last year. With regard to, with Mr. Schultz actually was the one who was spearheading that. We completed the assessment last year. That culminated in a report that was presented to council by the Pizzuti Company back in October of 21. At that time, Pizzuti gave a very high-level overview of what that report was. And their report really focused on 3 facilities. It focused on our PD headquarters, the operations complex, as well as City Hall. As we were finishing and finalizing that facilities assessment, we asked Pizzuti if they could include a discussion and analysis of a community recreation center. And that really came up because of the feedback that we had received from residents during the Issue 12 campaign. So Pizzuti included that in the report. However, it is very clear it was not anywhere near as thoroughly vetted as the other 3 facilities were. It was initially included. They gave some just initial feedback on a community rec center, identifying some potential sites, but it really did not go into a great deal of depth about that. So we had kind of put that to the side, but recognizing it's a need, but certainly not needed some further exploration. So right after the Pizzuti report was presented to council, it so happened that Mr. Collins had reached out to me to have a cup of coffee to share what the WISE plans were with regard to the facility here in Gahanna, which is one of their very popular facilities. And as we were having that discussion, we realized that there were some potentially overlapping interests. The WISE looking to potentially expand the Gahanna facility. We're talking about a community recreation center. The school has been talking about a field house that's going to be incorporated into its new plan as well. So again, a lot of overlapping interests. And we realized that we owed ourselves a discussion. If there's an opportunity to potentially pool our resources, whether it's between the Y, the city, and the schools, or even 2 of those 3, and it might be an opportunity to ease the burden on our community while enhancing the offerings that we could give to our residents, then we owed it to our residents to explore those possibilities. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Director Farrell and let her pick up the story from there.
Absolutely. So not to be redundant, but again, there's clearly a common interest. There's a need in the community for gathering space, for health and wellness, for socialization. We've seen that a lot over the last couple of years. That's truly important. To provide a mechanism for that is something that is valuable for all ages, regardless of if you're just walking or the very opposite of that spectrum. So as Mayor mentioned, the YMCA approached the community, which also happened to be the very same day that the schools gave a presentation to the Parks and Recreation Foundation about what the plans were for the new facilities for the community. It was clear based off of that conversation that there was additional need for space for extracurriculars in order to expand, and really not even expand, but to truly maximize what the needs were for the schools. So there's a common interest, and there's a potential and an opportunity to pair those together and create something that's very collaborative and maybe something that's even brand new that has never done, and that's never been done before. So I'm going to turn it over to, I don't know if an introduction is the right word to use. As Mayor said, Mr. Tony Collins is well known in the Gahanna community, but would like to hand it over to Mr. Collins to give an overview of the Gahanna branch, and also touch on some similar partnerships that are in action today that we may be able to learn from.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Council. It's great to see everyone. Great to see familiar faces, both here and here. Good friends, and it's always fun to be working in Gahanna. I was sharing with Councilmember Schnetzer earlier. Sorry, Councilmember. That you know, one of the joys of this job, this new role, I stepped into the Y role in June of 19, is being back working in Gahanna and having the opportunity to see old friends, whether it's at the Y or at Panera down the street or at Upper Cup Coffee, running into folks and connecting. It's a joy. So good to see everyone, and thanks for allowing us some time today to work with you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk and talk about what's happening at the Y. The Mayor and I talked a little bit earlier this year about all the exciting things that we've been able to accomplish over the past couple of years during our challenges with the pandemic. So I want to start there. I want to just touch off a little bit about what the Y has been doing and what the Y is, because a lot of folks, when I get a chance to talk to folks, don't really know the full breadth of the Y. Those of you who have known me for a long time know that I actually started my career with the Y back in the day before I came to Gahanna. So it's good to be able to come to Gahanna and tell the story a little bit about the Y and what we do here in Central Ohio. I'm only going to spend a couple of minutes doing that. I want to introduce you to some of your Gahanna residents. They're involved in the leadership of the Y here. They're going to talk to you a little bit about our Gahanna numbers and who we serve here in Gahanna. I just left the Y. I was telling them I was so excited. There's well over 200 people at the Y right now at 6 o'clock on a Monday night. There's 166 members who had checked in swimming, on a treadmill or running around doing different things. And then there was at least another 100 people in the gym for a little Y ball program, a junior Cavs Y ball program, little 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. It was pretty fantastic. So they'll talk to you a little bit about the Y. And then I just want to come back and finish up with what we talked about the art of the possible, and think about what we could potentially do together someday here in Gahanna. So I'll kick us off. I'll do a quick background. Do I have the control? Oh, I have control. No? Maybe? Do it again? Oh, there we go. All right. Look, we're already a step ahead. And you all know, everybody also knows that I might need to keep my time on, right? Just a little bit of background about the Y. I'm not going to go through the whole history. There will not be a test or a quiz later. But for those of you who didn't know, the Y of Central Ohio has been around for more than 165 years. The Y in Gahanna has been here since 2004. I am blessed to have been able to say that I was at the table with Councilmember Angelou, Councilmember McGregor, well, it was actually Mayor McGregor at the time, I'm sorry, when we entered an agreement with the YMCA to bring a Y here to Gahanna. It was one of 4 Ys that was built at the time with Liberty Township and Powell, Hilliard, and Grove City. Each community contributed a little bit. Gahanna at the time contributed both the land that the building sits on, as well as some dollars for infrastructure to help and get the Y set up and operating. And the idea was a community collaboration between the YMCA and the community, so that community center type services and programmings and connections could be offered here in Gahanna as well. So we got the kickoff here in 2004. Just another quick history piece. Some of you have been around Central Ohio know that we also have Ys around. We have a Y in Pickaway County. We have the North Y has been a very bustling Y for years and years. In the recent time, we opened 2 new Ys since I've joined Central Ohio, and that is in Whitehall, right down the road. We have a collaboration with their community center, partnership with the mayor and city council in Whitehall. And then, of course, our Reynoldsburg Y opened in 2020, and we'll finish off by inviting you to come see that Y. For those of you who don't know, the Y is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are a worldwide organization. We're actually the second largest volunteer organization in the world. We're run and managed by volunteers. I report to a board of volunteers that works with us to help advance the Y mission, to put Christian principles into practice through programs that build a healthy spirit, mind, and body. I start with that slide because a lot of folks don't remember that we're a nonprofit. Believe it or not, statewide surveys show that more than 50% of the folks in the state thought we were a private for-profit gym. We are very, very much a nonprofit, especially for the last 2 years. I can be very clear with you on that. During the pandemic, I'll talk a little bit about our pandemic efforts. We, of course, in March of 2020, we had to shut down just like everyone else did in the state of Ohio. But instead of stepping back and reserving what we do, we thought first what we can do to serve our communities. We reached out to all of our communities to ask, and our greatest need was in 3 primary areas. Number 1 was housing and shelter. We had folks in our homeless system here in Central Ohio that didn't have a place to go when they were told to stay at home. So we had to expand. At one point, we were operating 6 emergency shelters for the homeless in the Central Ohio community. We continue to stay in the housing and shelter business. Right now, tonight, we'll have about 1,800 people underneath our roof somewhere here in Central Ohio, including more than 700 people at the Van Buren Emergency Shelter for women and families. The second thing we leaned into was childcare for our first responders and healthcare workers. We all know that that was a great need. We opened 4 centers around Central Ohio to make sure that first responders and healthcare workers had opportunity for childcare. And then finally, we did a lot of community outreach. We were helping with food drops, distributing food from our locations, helping in neighborhoods, connecting community, and outreach, frankly, checking on our community members to make sure that everybody was okay during those real difficult times. Since June of 20, we've been back open. We've been excited to get things rolling again and get people connected. What I was really excited to see was how much people were ready to come back together again. In fact, our seniors were the fastest and quickest to come back. They were excited to be together, excited to see each other, even if it was just to sit over a cup of coffee or to walk next to each other on a treadmill. So we've seen people come together, and we got through those real challenging times, and we're able to fully open this past year in 2021 and get all of our Ys back open serving the community, including here in Gahanna. And we were able, actually Thursday, our Board of Trustees will adopt our recent strategic framework as well as our operational plan with our vision, our North Star being strong communities where all people are able to reach their full potential. And our framework includes 5 priorities, and number 1 is our thriving Ys, our Y here in Gahanna specifically. Just a little bit about the Ys general. We have 13 Ys in 4 counties. We also have a resident camp at Camp Wilson. We do a lot of youth development work. We're actually the largest child care provider in Central Ohio. The Y would probably, you'll hear often, is the largest child care provider in the state of Ohio. We operate Head Start centers, child care centers, school-age, after-school care centers, over 100 sites here in Central Ohio. Housing and shelter, I already mentioned, and then our community outreach programs. These are the things that folks don't necessarily understand are happening. For example, we have programs that focus on our New American community, and they're located, we can connect people here in Gahanna to those programs. We have a program that's connected with an organization called Stable Families that helps families who are really struggling and challenged right now, specifically with pandemic times, small grants, micro grants to help them pay their rent or a car payment. We help them with employment. We help them with childcare, those types of things. So those outreach programs include our Early Childhood Resource Network, plus our juvenile justice programs, and then our Y Without Walls programs. During all of what was happening during COVID and all of the challenges that we were all dealing with in the early parts of the pandemic, we also believed it was important to understand and recognize where our challenges were in terms of equity, inclusion, and diversity. Our Y made a commitment in June of 2019 to become, or I'm sorry, June of 2020 to become an anti-racist organization. We adopted an inclusion statement. I won't read all that to you, but to make sure that we're really focused on equity and inclusion and serving all of our community. We've adopted an anti-racism statement. We've immediately formed an anti-racism council. We have a plan that we're implementing as a part of our strategic framework that I mentioned earlier, and it's a priority part of how we move forward and how we serve. I want to bring David up and have David introduce the members of our Gahanna volunteer team that are here, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about the Gahanna Y and the specific numbers related to who we serve here.
Yeah, Mr. Thank you. Hey, good evening. My name is David Seepak. I live on Pond Hollow Lane, and I've been a resident of Gahanna for about 19 years. I currently serve as chair for the Gahanna YMCA Community Advisory Board. And we're a team of volunteers. Nearly all of us are residents of the city, whose purpose is to provide guidance and direction by aligning the 3 pillars of the YMCA's mission. So when you think about youth development, you think about healthy living, and you think about social responsibility. Well, what we want to do is we want to align those with the community guiding principles that our board aspires to, and that's around the ideas of authenticity, collaboration, creativity, and diversity. And so what our team does is we meet on a monthly basis with the Gahanna branch director, Shannon Nolan, and we talk about all kind of measures. And some of them are more objective measures, so there are some financial and operational metrics that we like to pay attention to. And then many of them are subjective measures, so things like voice of the customer, member feedback, strategic initiatives. And so these topics generally fall along one of our 6 tenets of our commitment to action. So we talk about programming. What services and programs are we offering to members of the community? We talk about community partnerships. So where are we aligning with community resources in order to provide complementary and not competing programs and services? We talk about facilities. Physically, what is our physical structure like in order to be able to provide these services? We talk about community outreach. So what are other organizations in Central Ohio that we can partner with to expand and enhance the services that we provide? And there's 3 up there that we've participated in here in the last year. We've been a regular participant or partner with the Byron Saunders Foundation, and that group collects food and provides Thanksgiving meals to those in need. Last year was our first year with Wagons Ho Ho Ho, which was similar to Byron Saunders. They collect food and distribute meals in December, along with a red wagon. And then we've done numerous programs on behalf of Grin. So historically, things like mitten drives, hat drives, coat drives, et cetera, as well as some food collection there as well. So we've got a team. You can see us listed up there. We also want to talk about strategy and development. So Michael is another board member here with me tonight. We want to ensure that we are building our pipeline of talent to serve on the board. And we also spend a lot of time around community giving. So a key part of our tenet is an annual campaign, where pre-pandemic we were raising about $60,000 to $70,000 a year in support of nearly $140,000 in annual scholarships, financial aid that we've been given to residents. Things to help support around swim lessons, around summer day camps, and certainly memberships in general. So here's some of the operational metrics that we like to look at, and you can see, pre-COVID, we had a membership tally of around 11,500. We're super excited that has started to build again, and certainly have really seen a lot of that growth in the last couple months. So we're current activity about 8,200 members. Swim lessons, typically we would have had 1,700 registered for those lessons. We're nearly there at about 1,100 right now. Day camp, we have typically 95 to 100 campers each summer. Last year, given kind of where we were with the pandemic, we scaled that back a little bit and had to cut those offerings in half to 50. And scans, scans represent visits. So in a given month, our average was about 29,000 visits each month, and currently for January, again, upward trajectory, we're at 13,500. So some great things, great experiences that we're seeing as we are proceeding into 2022. Let me just end with a member spotlight, and I won't read this. This is Fuel, and Fuel is a relatively newcomer to the United States, been here for about 5 years from the Caribbean. And a great story with Fuel is that she had never learned to swim. And so she was just thrilled to be able to take part in the YMCA services and recognizing that there really wasn't any age limitation to her ability to swim. And so a great example of some of the services that we're doing there. Now, for me, I don't know Fuel, but I have an Ernest story. So I've got a story similar to that with Ernest that I talk to late in the evenings. Michael's got a story as well. So each one of our volunteers have got many of these stories demonstrating the impact that the Gahanna Y has had to our community. I think we come back to Tony. I say we have been thrilled to work with the YMCA. We are thrilled to work with their experience and their passion to helping the community. Thank you.
Thanks, David. It's so awesome to have volunteers at the helm and partnering with us to help make sure we're connecting with the community and making sure that the needs are being met as it is in Gahanna, the needs are in Gahanna. We also have, I also want to thank Jan Ross. She's here. Jan's one of our volunteers on our finance committee for our board of trustees, helps make sure that our financials are here. So we have a lot of Gahanna folks involved in what we do. It's pretty cool, pretty exciting. And the last thing I just want to talk about, you saw the numbers. I talked to the mayor and Stephanie and the team about how cool it is to see the volume of people we serve as it compares to other communities. And Gahanna is one of our strongest Ys. Grove City, Gahanna, Delaware, now Reynoldsburg are all our highest participation Ys and highest what we call saturation rate, the number of people in a particular community that come to our community center. And Gahanna's always been one in the top 4. And for that reason, as we're starting to look forward and think about what's the future look like, we believe it's time to grow our Ys to meet the community's needs. This part of the community has been growing for, and not necessarily within the boundaries all the time, but just this region, right? We know this region is growing. We know Grove City's region is growing. We see it every day. We see what's happening obviously in Reynoldsburg and obviously in Delaware County. So we've looked at those Ys and we said, how can we continue to be responsive to community needs? We know before pandemic, we were challenged with space. Folks would say, oh, there's not enough space in the workout room, or there's not enough gym time, or there's not enough pool lanes. Pool lanes. That's a big deal, right? Pool lanes. So we knew that coming into this. And now as we're seeing, like I just was over there just an hour ago and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's packed in here. Thankfully we had plenty of parking, but it was packed in the space and we can see that need. Plus we know the building's 20 years old, right? We all have homes that are older and you need to invest in those spaces and have them grow with your family. And so we're starting to talk about what does that investment strategy look like. And so we're out talking in our communities to see what the community partners would like to do with us. We've also been partnering with, having discussions with healthcare partners in Central Ohio and other entities that may be interested in working us and collaborating. What you see on your screen is 3 different Ys as examples of collaborations. I've been talking about this with Mayor Jadwin, with the school superintendent here, about, for example, the Lake Community Center, when you see in Lake County, this is a collaboration between the local school system, the Y, and the Parks and Rec Department. So you've got the high school, the pool, the Y, and then the senior center, all connected together, all collaborating, working together. There's another Y in Wadsworth that's very similar, collaborative between the city and the YMCA. We have 4 here in Central Ohio that are local government partnerships where we're signed on with year-round agreements where we're operating in collaboration with the city. And then, of course, we have 3 others that we're here because of partnerships that help build the Ys. These types of programs that we've already mentioned are traditional things, including things like Why Without Walls, Stable Families. We've been working with cross-cultural dialogues to bring people together to convene, to talk about things that are happening in our communities. STEM education and our child care programming, our summer camp programming, and other teen and youth programs. We're beginning to bring mental health support into our spaces to help connect families, and then teen engagement. I am a product of YMCA Teen Leaders Club. I get dropped off for swimming lessons and get joined into the Y Leaders Club, and I am one in the family, the only person in my family to graduate from college. And I credit 2 things to that, and some of you know my mother is one of those things, and the Y is the other. So very proud of the legacy of YMCA programming. What I'd love to do is I've already invited the staff team, invite council members to connect together on a tour. Right down the street is a great example of a collaboration between one of our local governments and their Parks and Rec Department, as well as the Y, and that is the Reynoldsburg Community Center Y. It's a beautiful state-of-the-art facility built in collaboration with the city of Reynoldsburg, serving the community very well. It's quickly grown fast and serves as many, if not more people than most of our other Ys here in Central Ohio already. So we'll set that up another time, dates to be seen, but just to give you an idea of what the potential of collaboration and partnership could be. That's it. I think I might have went over my time a little bit, but if you'd like, I'm to be able to stick around and answer any questions.
I'll kind of I guess before we move on, just the what now, right? Because we said that this is the beginning stages of the conversation. So what's the path at this point? And it truly is research, fact finding, site visits. So the YMCA has agreed to send over agreements with existing partnerships, that way to evaluate what that agreement looks like from the city's perspective, as well as our other partners. So that, along with the comprehensive parks master plan, does create a mechanism for a needs assessment and as well as community input and a forum for feedback. So the timing is great in response to gaining some great opportunities for public feedback. Excuse me.
Any comments from council members? Yes. Mr. Ryder.
A couple of things, actually. So, Tony, I want to thank you so much for giving such a marvelous summary of the why. And I know it's just a summary with the breadth of all the programs that you guys are covering. We've been working in partnership with the mayor to actually get a refresh, and we invite other community organizations to come because, you know, everything I think is just getting into this like legacy issue of not really knowing what all these different organizations do. But I really love the fact that you really touched on some really salient points to what your organization does, but how you meet the needs of the community. And so I really would like to actually have you come back again and maybe give, or somebody you want to appoint, and actually talking deeper about some of those programs and how citizens of Gahanna can actually get access to those, or where do they find more information and all that kind of stuff. This is a very enticing experiment that the mayor and her staff are actually putting before us as a community. And I'm very encouraged and pumped up now, especially after your talk. The other dimension to this is that, you know, when the Y, and forgive me, but when the Gahanna Y was actually opened, it was actually too small the day it actually opened. Our family has been longtime members of the Y. And I have heard since the day I've been on council from residents, and I'm sure you remember when you were here, and I know our parks director has heard this too, that our community is actually begging for more access to the recreational activities. And so it's all of those things under that umbrella is why I'm really encouraged by this path. So I'm looking forward to it. That's all.
Yes, Mrs.
I just
Ryder.
thank Tony for coming, and I didn't recognize Brandy. It's hard to say. How are you? Good to see you. I didn't recognize you, and I was like, I know the face. But thank you for coming and giving us all that information. And I know the why is small, but sometimes it's a case of like doing what you can at the time. You know, you have to start somewhere, and you have to start with what you're able to, the land you have available and the place you have. So, and then you can expand from there.
Mrs. Angelou?
Yeah, it's really great to have Tony and Brandy here. And I remember when things were first percolating on this, and we wanted a different place for the Y. I don't know if you recall that. And we needed, when we couldn't get that, we actually have the land now, but we couldn't get that, we then went with the smaller one. And I went to the Y for several times trying to, kind of do the walking thing. I don't do the swimming thing, but the walking thing. Anyway, it was a wonderful opportunity, and people love this Y. And I'm thinking, where could we put a bigger Y? And it's kind of hard to find those things, but maybe we are finding it now. I don't know, but it's just wonderful to have you here. I remember when you left, and I remember walking up to you and saying, you need something bigger. This is just way too small for you. And obviously, I was 100% correct. And Brandy, you are a spectacular person too. I mean, you have worked together in City of Columbus and now this. And I can't think of a better people to come here, Gahanna, and show us potentially what we could do for a community center. I was a little jealous of the one up there in Whitehall when I saw it. It's beautiful, so, all right, thank you.
Any other comments?
If I could, I just wanted to thank you very much, Council, for allowing us to give this presentation tonight. Thank you, Tony, Brandy, Dave, Michael as well, for being here and offering your support. As Stephanie said, this is really just a very preliminary discussion. It is one, I would say we're in the exploratory nature right now. And as we've been having our facilities workshops, we've talked a lot about fact-finding and gathering information, which is what we're doing right now. And I keep using the analogy I just shared with Jan Ross right before council, is we need to go down the road. We're not sure where the road's going to lead, and it may be a dead end. I don't know, but we owe it to the community to explore those options to see what's out there. If it's something that makes sense, then as we continue to gather facts, if it continues to make sense, we'll keep digging deeper and deeper and getting into that and keeping you updated as well. But we wanted to give you, because we are doing the facility workshops right now on the other 3 facilities, and we're getting into that really deep dive on those, just to let you know where we are on this. We haven't forgotten about this. This is here. It's just in a little bit of a different stage and a different category. So thank you very much for the time to talk with you this evening about this.
Sure, perfect. And I'll just take a moment to share a little bit, since there's Y family here. I grew up in the Y. I was a water baby from the time before my earliest memory. I swam with Y teams through high school and spent many, many years in Y summer camps in Northeast Ohio. I have seen some of the best that the Y offers. I remember specifically growing up, we did a lot of latchkey. My mom was a public school teacher. My dad was an entrepreneur. So I spent a lot of time at the downtown Canton Y growing up. And that Y was more than a community center. It was also a homeless shelter. And so having that exposure as a very young person shaped a lot of my values about how we treat every member of our community. I still remember George growing up. That's the level of impact that the Y has had on my life. So it's great to hear this. I've lived in Gahanna 10 years, and the Y has been too small to accommodate my family. So I'm very excited to hear about the growth opportunities, whether it's in partnership with the city or not, but I'd love to raise my 5-year-old in the Y too. So I'm excited to have you all here, and I just wanted to take a moment to share how impactful the Y was to me growing up. So thank you all, and I'm excited for the opportunities going forward. Okay, with that, we are moving on to item 2 under the discussions, council rules of procedure. We've got some discussion topics specifically around communications, I think, and we can take a pause here while we have a number of guests departing.
Can't hear you. We need to move a little bit closer.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, crap. Yes, I apologize. Yes, thank you. Okay. We have an addition to the agenda tonight as well. Under item D, items from the Department of Human Resources, there will be a second item, and that is ordinance 0011-2022. So we will come back to that under the second item of D. All right. Now with that, Council President, did you have any updates or guidance for us on kind of where we're at on this item with regard to, I think, communication?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I have anything updated yet. Where we left this conversation before is that we're talking about how to actually deal with visitors that cannot make our meetings at the hearing of visitors for the regular meetings, but they still want to send us their comments. What is the protocol? What is our methodology for handling that type? There was one type of thinking that we actually just attach it to the minutes, but I think we collectively decided that the minutes should actually reflect what happens at a meeting, and the comments, whether they are virtual, are not really part of the minutes, so maybe they should be handled in another way. And any council member can actually correct me if I'm wrong on any point to that. So we're searching for a way to handle comments on those, and I don't know if we have really a good mechanism at the time.
So I'm aware that there may be some technological options, maybe through Granicus, that could be explored. I guess at this point, I'm of the mind that if we receive correspondence from a constituent, I think any council member can address that during council comment. Or if they request that it be added as a committee of the whole item, then we can just certainly discuss it. I certainly have concerns about, I don't think that correspondence should just be appended to minutes unless it's an actual topic of discussion or a council member brings it forward for discussion. Yes, Mr. Weaver.
Madam Chair, thank you. I just wanted to clarify some of my comments from our last committee, and thank my colleagues for I know there were some emails and for the feedback that occurred at the last meeting. Certainly do not believe that every email that we receive should be appended to the minutes. But I do believe that Rule 6.3 does not necessarily reflect the realities of our 21st century world. 7 p.m. on Monday nights can be prohibitive for individuals who would like to speak before the body. And I am of the mind that emailing us individually or emailing us to the council listserv does not necessarily is not necessarily an adequate substitute on that front. Certainly, when people come before council, there's a speaker slip. I'm aware of other communities where that speaker slip can be completed online, and that maybe if council wishes, this is something we can pursue with our vendor. I believe that an option such as that allows an individual to address an agenda item before the public so that it is included in some manner, whether it's appended to the end, see other correspondence. I believe the city of Worthington allows the public to search those submitted comments for those who are not necessarily able to be present. But I am aware of the concerns that my colleagues raised, and I've tried to think about those a lot in the intervening weeks here. I just, when all is said and done, I would like to see this issue explored to make ourselves as accessible as possible, not saying that we are not accessible and that we're not responsive to our individual emails, but as something moving forward. Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think just as a level set, every single member of this body wants to encourage community participation. A number of us ran on that in recent years, and I think that other members have modeled that type of engagement for many years. So I think that we're all here because we want people to be engaged and we want to be accessible to the community. It's just a matter of kind of how and figuring out that how. And Ms. McGregor, I will come back to, I think what I'd like to do is request that the clerk pursue kind of a survey of what other communities are doing and what technology is even available to us in order to evaluate, like fact-finding, just the presentation that we just had from this, the administration, just kind of to pursue options, best practices, what types of remedies are there available? Because I think we've identified some pros and cons, and I'd like to make sure that we know maybe how we can best field information in an inclusive manner and create records appropriately. Ms. McGregor?
The last meeting, I said that I was in favor of suggesting that comments could be added to the minutes, but not necessarily read. But I feel like I'm going to retract that statement in thinking about it, because, the minutes are just that. The minutes of the meeting are a record of what happened at the meeting. Comments sent in by email, text, or mail are not part of what happened at the meeting. And some problems arise when you think about doing, something, not having somebody speak or at the meeting. And maybe technology, we can figure out a way to do that, but how do we verify the comments that are sent in to be attached are actually from the person who purports to have sent them in? What if someone sends in comments that are racially offensive or threatens violence or is slanderous and wants it attached to the minutes? Who decides what is appropriate? I don't think anybody here wants to be the person that has to decide, what's appropriate to attach to our minutes. And I think that, I know people may not be able to come in here, but we are also accessible as far as email or phone calls or the grocery store, for goodness sakes. I think that's the fact that people can't come in and have their say, in front of the public body it is 7 o'clock on a Monday night, but it's not been a huge problem over the years. And maybe there's a way to address that, but the minutes of the meeting are what happens here, and if we start expanding that to other things, I think we're going to run into a lot of problems. That's my opinion.
Mr. Renner, did you?
Yeah, I just, there's a lot of parallels that I share with Councilwoman McGregor on what she's saying. I do like the idea of actually searching for a technological solution that, we all know that emails and comments to us are actually a matter of public record. And I am totally open to the idea that if there is some solution that moves those to a public domain that everybody can actually see what those emails are, to Councilman Weaver's issue that maybe if a comment is about an item that we're deliberating, the other side of that is are just the random comments that we get. And so we can certainly come up with better rules that differentiates one versus the other, and using technology to actually explore that, or actually come up with a use for that, that would be great.
So is the request to the clerk to fact find on this acceptable by my colleagues? Okay.
Did Crystal not do that?
Yeah, I thought,
Crystal sent us, okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're correct. So Crystal did, I think, a shortened time span survey. I think based on President Renner's comments, maybe the better thought here is to do like a follow-up with a little more detail into how the use of technology might play into that. What's considered maybe, a hypothetical question here, what's considered just an email, hey, I would like my street plowed next time, or, versus I'd like to specifically address, item 001-2022 or something.
Yeah, if I could just dovetail with that, and I should have said this in my previous statement, and I apologize, but I've come in an awareness that Granicus, which is the software that we have, actually does have other features that we're not using that could possibly be amended in this one. So, yeah, if we could just ask the clerk to actually explore that and give us a summary about that, I think that'd be something worthwhile.
Yeah, and a recommendation, I think, as well. Yes.
Madam Chair. So no opposition whatsoever to having the council office take a look at what other technological resources are out there. But I guess as we have this on the agenda as a discussion item, I would just ask my colleagues on council to maybe think kind of what's the objective, what is it that we're trying to accomplish here? And this is, of course, a rhetorical question. When someone, what's the aim of communication to council? And what's, I guess there are certain degrees, I guess, or levels of how effective or persuasive that might be. I don't know that there's a technological solution to meeting somebody in person, whether it's at that podium, whether it's afterwards, which is very often the case after somebody addresses us. I know in many cases in the past, we will go down into, onto the lower level and have a back and forth dialogue. I know in, my 8 years plus of service, I've had phone calls and gone to, people's houses and witnessed a problem firsthand that they might have an issue with. So I don't know that there's a technological replacement for standing at the podium. But to, I think, everybody's point here, I don't think that we're not accessible, whether it's email, whether it's phone. If somebody chooses to submit snail mail, I know we've received some of that in the past, and various other forms of communication, again, face-to-face probably being the most persuasive amongst them. So I don't want to stand in the way of exploring what other alternatives are out there, but if the goal is to replicate somebody standing in front of the podium, I don't know that there is a technological
I don't think that's the goal.
replacement for that. So.
Yeah, you make a very good point, Councilman. I am already on record that there's no way you can actually replace that because that's part of participatory government. But I think what we're getting to is that finding that space that how do we make all these other comments that are coming at us via email in a public domain so that anybody can actually search. They can search our agenda items. They can search our minutes. There should be this other thing that they can actually see, what emails are actually coming to us.
And maybe that's the better point. And thank you, Mr. Schnetzer, for actually bringing up the importance of advocacy and sort of that human connection. I know that in my day job, it's important and certainly can't be replaced with an email oftentimes. But maybe really what we're talking about here is sort of organization, because I think that maybe gets to Mr. Weaver's sort of point too, is that people want their voices to be heard. They want us to acknowledge that their contact came in, that we received that contact, and what's the better way to organize that rather than just public records search through an email database. Perhaps there's some solution there that can help our internal processes as well, but.
Madam Chair, I think that's right. Certainly, I think the goal here would be to have, rather than submitting a full public records request, which I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing, but if you're trying to get, for example, someone at home is trying to get a sense of where other community members stand and other individuals wanted to submit comments on a particular item, then that would be an easily searchable thing via our database or our Granicus, whatever the vendor may be.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think this was.
So we'll just leave, for right now, we'll just leave the rules as is.
Yes.
As is fact-finding from the clerk and potential recommendations and in coming weeks or so, I guess. We'll keep this on as an agenda item, and depending on clerk's capacity, we'll have updates from there. Does that sound okay? And certainly a council member can come forward with any suggestion or proposal at any time, too. Yes, Ms. Padova?
With the kind of the direction that this is going in a little bit with, is there a way to keep better track of emails that constituents sent to us? Could we include that in the fact-finding to see if other cities are doing something with that, or if all of them are just, if they're doing it the same way as we currently are, if they have found a better solution?
Sure. I think that sounds like a great idea. If you could let us know what our processes are, maybe Pam at some point, and if there are recommended improvements on those processes. Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Section C, items from the Department of Public Service and Engineering. The first is motion 0004-2022. And Director, the floor is yours.
Good evening, thank you. So to start us off this evening, I plan to present the pavement maintenance program timeline that we put together. It's a very brief overview of
It's a flashy program this year.
It's a brief overview of the pavement maintenance program timeline, particularly the 2022 street program. So starting off at the very beginning of the far left side, that's the November 21st to February 2022 timeframe. This is what I call the prep timeframe. This is where we conduct our pavement maintenance ratings. That's where we go out and we rate every single street to generate a pavement condition rating. We drive all 130 miles of streets. An interesting fact with that is we actually rate each individual segment. So a segment is like from a stop sign to a stop sign, or if it's curved street, it's from the stop sign to, maybe where the street name changes. So that means that we end up rating 1,200 segments throughout our city every single year. Once we have assessed a pavement condition rating, which is a score of 0 to 100, with 100 being the best, we start evaluating those streets. We take the lowest rated streets, and then we evaluate their next treatment, whether that might be a crack seal or resurfacing, or if there is no more maintenance opportunities left, it's a rebuild. And then from there, we start to measure out the curb lengths, the asphalt, the tack, for the generation of the engineer's estimate. We put the engineer's estimate together for the creation of the bid, or we'll step into the next step, which I'm calling bidding. So that next step starts with a request for permission to bid in front of council, which is what I'm here for tonight. So we request your approval to bid the program. We then publicly advertise it. That takes roughly 3 weeks. Once we get the bids back, we'll evaluate them, and we'll bring forward to council after evaluation, which takes another couple of weeks, the lowest responsive and responsible bidder to request to enter into contract with that company. Following that, we start working on resident notification as the bid is going through the council legislation process, which takes about 6 weeks. We'll start work on our resident notification, our public outreach, maps, all those different pieces that we use to communicate with our residents about, hey, this is coming, this is what we're doing to your street, to give them as much information ahead of time, as well as preparing ourselves for the actual construction portion of it. Once we enter into construction, the amount of time that we have drastically shrinks as there's a lot of work going on, so we try to prepare as much as we can for that time frame. So next we step into construction. That generally starts around May. We usually try to hold off any major items until school's out, but the smaller items, the less disruptive items, will allow the contractor to start a little bit earlier in May. Items such as like crack seal or curb replacement. We have a very large and robust program, so providing them ample time is key to ensuring that that the program is completed on time. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. Are these the last, I'm jumping ahead. Are these the last Detroit streets that are part of the rebuild?
Are they the last ones, period? No, they're
Okay.
not the last ones, period.
Okay.
So moving on, the next one.
Never be the last one.
Wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking, yeah.
Shoot. Okay.
And I can certainly add more to that. So the next step is going to completion. So we work throughout the whole summer when we have nice weather, and then we try to wrap it up before school starts again. Again, that's really important for the rebuilds where the street's completely shut down, where buses can't drive down it, residents can't drive down the street. So once we reach completion, as we call substantial completion, we start to put together a punch list. And the punch list is a list of items that, may be deficient, may have gotten damaged during the construction process. It's very normal to have a punch list and items to be repaired. It's a multi-million-dollar program, so things are going to happen. So we're going to work with the contractor to, work through that punch list and remediate those items. Once that is complete, we start our one-year warranty period. We wait a year, we come back the following year, the following summer, we re-inspect every single street that we have maintained, produce another punch list, a one-year punch list, a list of deficiencies that may have popped up, and again, work with our contractor to repair those and close those out. Excuse me. So moving on, I am here to respectfully request legislation to bid our 2022 street program. To add to your question, Councilwoman Bowers, there are plenty of Detroit streets left. Our rebuild program is focused on Detroit's, but there are other streets that are not Detroit's that are being reconstructed, that just have no more maintenance options left available to them. A good example of that would be like Divon Lane and Divon Court. It may have been a Detroit street once upon a time, but right now it appears to follow our standard composite layout, but there is no other maintenance items that we can do to those streets. It has been resurfaced, it has been repaired. So again, our goal is to take care of those Detroit streets. We're knocking out a lot of them this year, but unfortunately they're going to be around for a few more years. There are some newer Detroit streets that were resurfaced probably within the past 10 years, maybe mid 2000s, I would say. So those aren't in terrible shape. Yes, they have the same issues that Detroit streets have with the ponding, very small curb reveal, or no curb in some cases because it's just deteriorated to nothing. But those are higher on the scale, so we have to take the worst streets first and maintain those first.
I'm just really glad to see Newton Court on this list, so thank you. My neighbors will be very happy.
Good.
Mr. Renner?
Yes. Grant, thank you so much for your presentation on this, and thank you for always creating such a comprehensive list as much as you can, because I know everybody, constituents, I know the mayor gets it, we get it, we hear from constituents all the time about streets. Is it your intention to bid this out as one package, or are you going to consider multiple bids or multiple contractors to get through this?
Our plan is to bid this out as one contract. In 2020, I believe that was our first year that we bid two contracts, and the reason we did that in 2020 was there was the industrial program, which was a different pavement composition, and some different contractors may have bid on that, that may not have been able to bid or wanted to bid on a residential program. A residential program is very different because it's not a lot of, trying to think of the proper terminology, it's a lot quicker and easier when you have a nice, long, big street and they just blow through it. And we actually did get a different contractor for that industrial program. So this is our standard program, and I would not expect to receive any benefit from splitting up into multiple different programs.
Okay.
Ms. Bowers?
Thanks.
How many are you expecting to do? How many roads? I
I
know
have not-
we're doing double, I think, what we normally do, but
So I haven't counted the actual road names, but I have come up with the anticipated mileage, and I feel I should mention that this is the anticipated list. We feel pretty confident with it, but we have some, final pencil sharpening, but then when the bids come back, depending on prices, we may have to adjust. Hopefully not. So the total mileage we're looking at right now for resurfacing is 5.93, and the total mileage for rebuild is 1.22.
thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Schnetzer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing too technical, I guess, other than your standard resurfacing. How long does that take, assuming you get fair weather?
To complete the resurfacing?
Yeah, is that a week?
It all depends on the other steps that need to be completed, such as curb repairs.
Okay.
Curb repairs, they can take a day, if you only have a few. If there's a lot, or if it's a complete curb replacement because the curb's completely deteriorated, it can be a few weeks. The actual function of milling off the asphalt and placing new asphalt a day, you basically mill it off in a day, then they'll come back a day or two later and then place the asphalt back on.
Quite a bit less invasive than the rebuild, right?
Yes, yes, much less invasive. There really isn't much of an impact or a delay to our residents on resurfacing. As soon as they put the asphalt down and get a roll or two on it, you can immediately drive over it. So at most, you'll see about 15 minutes. And our contractor has worked very well in the past to mitigate any blocked driveways as well.
Okay.
So they try to do partial width driveways if there's curb that needs to be replaced in the driveway. So we try to minimize it as much as we can and move as quick as we can. It also pays for them to move quicker too.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Weaver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director, thank you for the presentation. Just a quick clarifying question. Riva Ridge between Klotz and which Venetian intersection? Because it does loop all the way around.
It's between the first one.
Okay, so
Yes.
closer to the high point.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Got it. Thank you.
If I could just have one little factoid to Councilwoman Angela's question about how many, how much. And Grant, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is back in 2019, we invested $1.3 million in resurfacing. This year and 2021 and 2022 is $2.6 million in resurfacing.
I
So
thought
it
it was
is
about
more than
doubled.
double that,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, that's what the expectation was. I just wanted to clarify.
Mr. Renner?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if this is exactly where we should have this talk. And if the mayor or the administration, if you want to, have it at a different time and talk about it. But I want to talk actually about the bid itself and the characteristics that you look for when you award a bid. Because I certainly do not want to replicate what we had last year. That contractor should not be again. And so I guess what I want to do is have a talk about that. And if you don't think this is appropriate, then I'd like to know when. We'd like to have a talk about how we actually bid these and when we're looking at awards, what types of things are we going after? For instance, are we looking at contractors that have a clear DEI statement? Contractor last year doesn't. So, and there are other things that we should probably look at. But again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, and catch you guys off guard, but I definitely want to have that conversation.
I think that we could certainly have that discussion when the time comes to, after this gets bid, or we can even have it just as a discussion item at an upcoming council meeting. I probably would want to have our city engineer here as well with you, because I know he's very much involved in that process too.
Yeah.
A high revised code plays a major part in that, as you know, from your role yourself. So I don't have that accessible. I'd probably want to reference that and have that information available to share with the public as well as council.
That's fair.
If you don't mind, we can schedule that in an upcoming meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Ms. McGregor?
Is it the perception that there was a big problem, or was there, did we have a lot of issues more than you? We did twice as much. Were there a lot of complaints, or were there areas where there were complaints?
So with any street program, any contract, and any construction job, you do always run into challenges, especially of this magnitude. A multi-million-dollar contract, about $4.8 million contract. So yes, we did run into some challenges last year, but we do every year. I would certainly like to review those concerns that you're referencing to make sure that we captured everything throughout the program and there wasn't anything lost. I'll say right here that it wasn't Yes, there were issues, but it didn't seem like a complete failure across the board of the contractor, but we definitely, we worked through some challenges, and we would hope that if that contractor would bid again, that, you know, they'll have learned from the challenges and mistakes of the past.
Could you give us an example of one of those challenges?
Well, I wasn't prepared to answer.